Welcome to Gurus on the Spot, bringing you nuggets of well-being from the Indian wisdom traditions. I'm Veena Rampal, classical Indian dancer and spiritual coach. My guest today is Consultant-turned-Yogi. Based in Delhi, she is a practitioner and teacher of classical hatha yoga. Let's meet Kanika.
So it's great, really great to have you here, Kanika.
Thank you so much, Veena. Thank you for thinking of me for this.
It's an absolute pleasure. And really the reason that I've started this series is because there is so much half-baked information out there on yoga in particular, but also on various other Indian wisdom traditions. And so the aim with this really is to give people really good, reliable information. So I wanted to start with your story. So I looked at your website and you say here, very interesting, you say that you grew up really as a typical 90s kid, working very hard, studying very hard, and then you realized that you were doing everything that you were told to do, but you didn't feel successful. You say that you were constantly working, constantly tired, constantly stressed and constantly anxious.
Yeah.
And then you turn to yoga.
Yeah.
So now I think this is something that a lot of people will be able to relate to, because we do that, don't we? We wait until we're exhausted and then we finally kind of give in to the thing that works.
Yeah.
So what I'd really like to know from you is, at that time, at that point where you were constantly stressed, constantly anxious, what did a typical day look like for you? What were you doing in your life?
You might be familiar with this, right? In India, like there's so much stress on academic achievements. And so I did my engineering, I did an MBA from one of the best business schools in the country. I was working as a corporate management consultant. So in some sense, like all the boxes were ticked, right? Like you were making money, you had so-called success, you had a good friend circle, you had everything in that sense that you wanted. So, and I remember this, I remember being away on vacation to Thailand for about a week or 10 days. And during that time, also, I took my laptop with me. I was on calls. And I remember that this one time that I couldn't be available for a meeting because we were on this tiny island where we didn't have internet connectivity. And I remember my manager told me that, oh, you know what, being a consultant is like being a doctor. You have to be on call all the time. And honestly, that ticked something off in me. I said, no, I don't think this is what I want. And I don't think it's as important as being a doctor. If I miss a meeting, it's not the end of the world. And I don't think that the work I'm doing is that critical that I can't take time out of that job to just have a vacation and to relax and to just let my hair down.
Then you turn to yoga. Now, I know that you trained at the Isha Yoga Centre in South India. Yes. Can you tell us, what was a typical day there like during your teacher training?
Yeah, okay, wow. Now, when I'm going to describe it, it's going to be even more hectic in terms of the kind of work that you're doing and the number of hours you're engaged in. But there was just such a difference in how I experienced both these versions of my life, right? So a typical day now, the Isha Yoga Centre, the teacher training program is 21 weeks long. So it's about 5.5 months. And there's no break in between, like there's no weekend. So it's 21 weeks back to back every day, every single day for those 21 weeks. And our day starts, the class starts at 5:30 in the morning with yoga practice. So you're ideally up at 4:30, if not later. And you're showering, getting ready, sort of just making your way to the session. And 5:30 to 9:30, we would have our morning practices. So that's 4 hours of yogic practices that you're doing. Post that, we would have brunch. So you get only 2 meals at the ashram, if you, for those of you who might have been to the center. So you get 2 meals. So 10 o'clock is brunch timing. and 10 and 10:45. So you go for the first or the second batch. There would be times when you're doing additional practices along with your regular sessions. So it would often happen that after that session's over at around 9:30, you're doing some more yoga practices before you go for, say, the second batch of brunch. And after that, we would have our noon session, which would be normally around 11:30, 12. We would be doing a lot of chanting, breathing practices, and studying different aspects of human anatomy, diet, Siddha medicine, which is an ancient form of traditional medicine in India, just like Ayurveda. It's more popular in South India. And then we would have the evening practice session. We would have like a snack or a juice or something after the noon session. Then we would have our evening practice session at 4. So you're empty stomach by the time you're coming for the second practice session. That would go on for about 2.5 hours. So roughly by 6:45, we would get free from that. And then go for our dinner. So the second batch of dining happens at 7 or 7:45. So we'd go for dinner. And post dinner, we would have a night session as well, so which would be normally around 8:30. And that would go on till 9:30. Ideally, it would usually be, sessions where we're learning about other aspects of yoga, just meditativeness, and different, just so many aspects of this deep yogic science. And then you go to bed, you're exhausted completely. You pretty much are sort of, you've dozed off even before you hit the bed. And this is, of course, the regular schedule. Now, as the program progressed, you're also being evaluated on different aspects. So you're being evaluated on how you're teaching, on how well you've become familiar with the concepts and understood different aspects of the of hatha yoga. So whatever little free time you're managing to get during the day, you're then spending that studying or practicing. And so it was pretty intense, the most intense thing I've done in my life.
The most intense thing, that's amazing. Now, what was the key difference between the busyness before and that very intense ongoing activity? Because I think that there is a misconception that when we say slow down and relax, that people think you become less productive, but that clearly wasn't the case with you. So can you tell us about that? What was the difference?
So it was very different. In fact, and a very clear indicator of how different it was how I was feeling within, right? And not just emotionally, but also I was feeling energetic. I was feeling more alive. I was going through a day of like 16 to 18 hours of activity without feeling drained out. And this was on 2 meals in a day. So, and before this, I was having more rest in some sense, but everything in terms of my quality of life was significantly improved when I was in the program. So, and it was a lot of aspects to it. One was, the practices that we were doing, they give us a different kind of strength and energy to go through the day. The diet that you're consuming, the environment that you're in. And I think the most important thing was that I was just so grateful and so joyful to be there. Yeah. So I felt that there was no resistance, or even if there were moments of resistance, I found that melting away. Because in my job, even if I had to like wake up at, say, a little early morning for a call or something, I would do it with a certain amount of resistance. I wouldn't really give myself to it like I gave myself to the yoga program. And even now in my daily life, like there are times when I have to take classes that start at 6:30, which means I have to be up at 4 to be able to get ready, drive to work, get everything ready for session. But there's such a difference. I'm just doing it so much more joyfully. So it doesn't feel like work in that sense. Yeah.
So you've taken that joy and I think that different quality of attention, because for me, I think that's a key thing that we get with an authentic yoga practice, is that the quality of our attention changes, so that we're actually able to achieve more with less effort and with less output of energy. It's quite remarkable. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the mistakes that you see out there, because I mentioned that in the introduction that one of the reasons I started this series is because there is so much half-baked information out there, and there are a lot of people who are very well-meaning, but they have either haven't been properly trained, or maybe they have been properly trained, but then they've decided to sort of change what they've been taught and maybe, you know, add strange music or mix it up with some other kind of exercise practice. So you get this mishmash of yoga that actually is not authentic yoga. So what is the most common mistake that you see out there, and what should teachers do to correct that?
Yeah, okay, wow. So I think, you know, just before I get into that, I want to quickly talk about, you know, what yoga is essentially, because I feel that the reason all of this is coming up is because there is a very basic fundamental mismatch in terms of how yoga is being perceived and understood, right? So if I were to say yoga, like 90% of the people out there, maybe even 99%, would just think, you know, it's stretching, getting into impossible postures, and wearing Lululemon pants and sort of putting up pictures on Instagram, because that is what the majority, and it's a sad case in India as well, because that is the perception of yoga that has been marketed and has been propagated in some sense.
I just have to say, I love my Lululemon pants. I really do. But
Yeah.
I completely understand and agree with what you're saying, and I support what you're saying, because that there is something about the marketing, the marketing piece, and then there's the real stuff. And what we want to do here is to start to market the real stuff. So yes, please carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, you know, people think of yoga as an exercise form or a series of stretching practices. In essence, yoga means union. And this doesn't mean that you have to sit in a posture to be in union. When you're one with the cosmos, it could be through any different path, you know, and there's so many different paths to do this. Hatha yoga is one of the paths to attain to that sort of ultimate union between you and the cosmos, or between you and the universal, or become one with God in some sense, you know, whatever description it is that people would like to give to it. So Hatha yoga now is what is, you know, being seen as yoga in common parlance.
Yes.
But yoga essentially is union. And anytime the word yoga is attached to something, it means that it is a complete path to attain that union, right? So it could be bhakti yoga through devotion. It could be jnana yoga through self-inquiry. Or it could be karma yoga through activity. It could be kriya yoga, you know, through yogic practices. And hatha yoga, when we say hatha yoga, now when hatha has the word yoga attached to it, which means hatha yoga is also a path in itself. So it is one of the paths to the ultimate. Now, when you understand this, and when you understand the significance of what it is that you're, of course, learning, and then people who are going on to teach are also offering it to others, then the kind of dilutions or distortions that you're comfortable making, or that that you actually think are maybe enhancements to the practice, you will be so resistant to doing that, or you will not feel comfortable doing that, because you've recognized what it is that you're offering.
Yeah.
So I think the main disconnect would come from people actually recognizing what it is that they're offering. Yoga is not beer yoga or goat yoga. You know, it's not simply about the postures and the practice. It is so much deeper than that. And it took me a while, to be honest, you know, to come to that, to arrive to that, because I had gone to different schools of yoga in that sense. And I understand that, you know, everybody has their own philosophy behind it. And I mean this with the complete reverence and respect to all the teachers I've had before. But it wasn't until I found an actual yogi as a guru, like Sadguru, I did not experience what yoga is. I was, of course, getting physical benefit. I was getting psychological benefit. My mental health was better. But to actually experience that union hadn't happened. So now, you know, coming to your question, that what are some of those distortions? I will not, and I don't want to really, I mean no disrespect to anyone, but, you know, just say, especially since we hold yoga in such high regard, and for me it's an absolute even beyond science, I feel like it's so sacred to me and to the teachers at Isha and other participants, and you've experienced this as well, right? Because it's something so sacred. Even distortions like opening your eyes in some practices, or playing music, or instructors coming and touching you and pushing you into a posture. So I feel that, because you're simply seeing it as a practice form or as a physical practice, which is why you feel comfortable doing this.
Right.
Now, what Sadhguru says is that it's actually, in a way, communication between you and the universal. Now, if you're in an intimate conversation with the universal, with the ultimate, would you like someone touching you or disturbing you, or, sort of interfering in any way with that? So even the way we offer our practices, we'll never speak while we're doing the practice. Because I've seen this, it's very common. People are doing the practice and instructors are giving the instructions at the same time, like they're talking and doing the postures, which is something you would never see at Isha, because it's completely, it's almost blasphemous to see that for us, because we feel that it's so violating of the profoundness of the practice that it is.
This is huge, and I think that when I had tears in my eyes actually when you pointed out that this is a very intimate communication between you, the individual, and the cosmos. And when you hear it like that, when that really lands in your ears, there is no way that you're going to think that it's okay to fiddle with it this way, or like you say, go and interfere with the person, touch them, move them, open your eyes, talk, it just wouldn't even occur to you to interfere with that kind of intimacy. And I think that you put it so beautifully. I've never heard it said like that. You have put it so beautifully, and I hope that for the people who hear this, that they really get that sense of deep joy and reverence, and that it really touches them at its spiritual depth, because that is what it's about. So thank you very much. I want to ask you about Guru. You mentioned Satguru. Guru is something that I'm going to be returning to again and again in this series, because I think it's a really key piece. I think that there are many issues with Guru and the notion of Guru and so on. But for now, can you please tell us something about Satguru that you have experienced, maybe some moment where you have been with him personally, something about his quirk, something maybe that you haven't shared before, because he is quite a remarkable person and a remarkable guru, a remarkable being, very unusual, very full on. I mean, there is nothing bland about Satguru. He's not scared. I mean, in his public talks, he is not scared of occasionally dropping a swear word, for example. He is really full on and very vibrant. So can you share something about him that would give us an insight into him as an individual?
Okay, yeah, definitely. So I think, and it's very intimate actually. I've only shared this with a closed group of family and friends. But so when I went to the ashram, I went with a very clear distinction of what I wanted. I went with a very clear idea that I want to learn yoga and work on myself, but I'm not here for any guru. I'm not here for any master, because I had a lot of resistance to that. And I get that with a lot of people, right? Because there have been so many gurus in some sense who have maybe not been true to what the role of a guru is, or to the sort of haven't had that kind of integrity. So I was very resistant to seeing anyone as a master. And so I went with this idea that, it's only about me learning yoga, and I don't have to really take anyone as a guru or a master. And but gradually through the program, I found myself, experiencing things which my logical mind and my modern education couldn't explain. So I was finding that I knew so little. I was feeling so out of depth with everything it was that I was experiencing. There was no logical explanation for how I was feeling and experiencing just everything in the ashram. And I remember this one time, and this was, I think, the first time that I actually got to be in close quarters with him. And it's so, if for those of you, if you've been to the ashram, you'd know this, that whenever Sadhguru is in the ashram, he's just there around on his bike, and a couple of swamis or brahmacharis will be with him, just conducting regular work. There is no crowding around him. People just let him be, and they'll do a namaskaram from far away. But other than that, there's no like bowing down, touching his feet or anything. Like, it's very
He actually doesn't like that, does he?
yeah, it's very chill. Like, so I remember I was walking to the dining hall, and he was there. He just happened to be there, and I just was spellbound that, how is he here? Like, less than 10 feet from me. And he was talking about regular work, like to the swamis, giving them some sort of guidelines, about what they need to do, about just different aspects of the ashram. And I just looked at him, and I did namaskar. And I don't know what it was, but it was something within me that just melted, or that sort of broke. And I found myself just sobbing. Like, it was, I don't know what it was. It was like this dam had broken in me, and I was just sobbing. And it wasn't tears of, sadness or misery. I was just so taken with the kind of immense love that was pouring out of his being. And he wasn't doing anything. He was just, he was like with his sunglasses, and he had his bike on the side, and he was just talking, doing regular stuff. And here I could feel this kind of universal, boundless love emanating from him. And I had no explanation for that. And I just felt that I was so overwhelmed with just gratitude and love for this person that I didn't even think I would ever open up to, in some sense. And that was, for me, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, because I feel like that was such a pivotal moment for me, because I felt a lot of resistance just melt away, because everything that I'd been sort of intellectually building up, as boundaries, there was no way for me to resist to what was like this immense ocean of just pure love. And he didn't say anything, he didn't do anything, he didn't even look at me. And here I was just melting. So that for me was phenomenal. And other than that, whenever I volunteer with programs, it's just incredible to see him, how full of life and how vibrant he is. But and there are many facets to him, in the sense that he can be so intense at times, and he can be so it'll be so hard for you to understand, because in some sense he's not a slave to a personality like all of us are, right? So we've built this personality that we're always using as a crutch, in some sense, or that we're always
projecting,
operating in our life with that. But he doesn't have that. So it's like water. He can be in any shape that you put him in, so, or he wants to be in that sense. So I don't know if I'm articulating this the best way, but yeah, there aren't really words to put it to actually
No, you said it very eloquently, and thank you so much for sharing that very personal moment. I know that many people will appreciate that very much. And I think on that note, I just have one more question before we go, which is, can you tell us a little bit about Surya Namaskar, the benefits of Surya Namaskar? So just in a very practical way. Now, Surya Namaskar, most people is now translated as sun salutation or sun salute, which we won't go into the issues of that. Let's just stick with calling it its actual name, Surya Namaskar. Can you just tell us, what are the health and well-being benefits of a Surya Namaskar?
Sure. So actually, any sun practice, whether it's Surya Kriya is actually the original practice from which Surya Namaskar has come. And there's another practice that is known as Surya Shakti as well. So all these practices, essentially when we say Hatha Yoga, Ha represents the sun, the deeper meaning, and Ta represents the moon. Now, when we say sun and moon, it's not the actual sun and moon, but the sun and moon that is within us, which is essentially your masculine nature and your feminine nature. Now, you want to call it sun and moon, you want to call it Ida Pingala, or you want to call it yin and yang. So essentially, when you're doing hatha yoga, you're bringing a balance between the two. So, so that is essentially the essence of hatha yoga, that you're bringing your energies into balance. Now, when you're doing practices like Surya Namaskar, Surya Kriya, Surya Shakti, what it does is that it activates the samat prana in the system, which is in some sense your sun's energy within the system in that sense. So especially during these times of Corona, COVID-19, it's extremely important that your samat prana is activated, because that enhances your immunity. So one of the first benefits would be that it would enhance your immunity. So it would, if you find that you're falling sick very frequently, just being able to make yourself more resistant and immune to the different viruses that are going on, that would be the first benefit. The more physiological benefit would be that it really helps to strengthen your spine. And in yoga, we consider the spine as the most important part of your body, more important than your brain even. So if they say that, your age, the age of your spine is represented, is what represents your age. So if your spine is young and healthy, it's going to reflect in every aspect of your physical, emotional, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, all of that. So it really helps to strengthen your spine and make it flexible and strong, which is very important if you want to sit and meditate, right? Because you want to be able to sit comfortably, and that won't happen unless you have a good, strong spine. And other than that, especially for women, the sun practices are very, very helpful to balance out your hormonal imbalances. There's an almost epidemic of PCOS, PCOD happening these days.
What's PCOS?
A polycistic ovarian disorder, which is very common amongst young women, especially young girls these days. So you will have young girls, in their early teens who are starting to develop PCOD and PCOS. So it's these practices are very beneficial for that as well. And if there are other issues like diabetes or thyroid, the practices are very, very powerful. Surya Kriya, Surya Namaskar, Surya Shakti. So yeah, definitely there are immense benefits to practicing these. And of course, you'll be healthy and fit, and you'll be physically active and energetic.
Yes. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing such concrete information. I know people are going to get a lot of benefit from it. So can you tell us, where can people connect with you and find you online?
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much, Veena, for having me. So if you would like to connect with me, I have a website, which is Nisarga Hatha Yoga, which is NISARGA. Hatha is HATHA, and yoga, YOGA.com. I'm also pretty active on Instagram these days. I'm trying to make a lot of videos and content about different aspects of yoga, simple things that you can change in your daily life, aspects of a yogic diet. So just overall health and wellness. And you can follow me on Instagram. It's Kanika, KANIKA .hatha yoga. So HATHA yoga. And I'm also sort of going to debut with a YouTube channel soon.
Brilliant.
So,
Brilliant.
Yeah. So which will be Kanika Hatha Yoga. So it's
That's
my name.
Wonderful. Yeah. That's one. And I have to say, I highly recommend Kanika's Instagram feed. It is fantastic, really nourishing and nurturing. So do connect with her there. And you can also connect with me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Veena Rampal, where I share well-being tips and spiritual coaching, spiritual tools from the Indian wisdom traditions. Kanika, thank you so much for joining us on this International Yoga Day 2020. You are an absolute blessing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Veena, for having me.
My pleasure.